Welcome to Pound for Pound Sports. I'm Nick Eustace.
And I'm Dayyn Anderson.
And thank you for joining us once again, Justin TV, all you wonderful people out there. PFPsports.com is your website. That's where we put everything up every single day. And I also wanted to point out the fact that we just signed a deal with ESPN Radio here in San Diego, and we're very, very proud of that and proud to be affiliated with an incredible brand like that. I mean, honestly, there's really no better place to go, and we have a unique opportunity in that nobody's really covering this incredible sport of MMA or combat sports in general down here in Southern California. So our show launches August 4th, Saturday from 9 to 10. We'll get you the details out there if you guys want to listen to the live stream through their website or just watch everything on our website. So it's something we're very, very excited about. And with that, man, I'm just walking around the other day and I'm thinking to myself, man, you know, after UFC 148, I mean, Anderson Silva basically did everything that everybody thought he was going to do. And, you know, the one thing that I'm thinking about now is, you know, probably like everybody else, what's next for Anderson Silva right now? I mean, you know, everybody out there obviously is thinking Chris Weidman. He's the guy that's pretty much shown that I don't think there's any doubt that this guy's probably the most credible number one for Anderson Silva out there. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's a bit early to call him number one. I mean, he did have a phenomenal performance against Mark Munoz, but I think the UFC brass knows what direction they want to go in. They're just waiting for a bunch. I mean, we got a bunch of fights coming up with Stan and Bisping, and even Saturday night with Lombard and Bost. I mean, there's a ton of fights that have title implications on the line. So I think we're just going to have to wait a couple more months and see where that all unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, everything's going to have to play out the way it should. The one name you mentioned out there, and the one name that kind of sticks out for me is the fact that, okay, Hector Lombard, nobody's coming in with more hype in recent memory in any division, really. But really, should we be throwing Hector Lombard's name out there without having a UFC win yet?
No, absolutely not. You know what? Anderson Silva's camp has come out, and they're talking about, you know, guys like Weidman, guys like Lombard, and they're after a big money fight, especially coming after that title defense against Chael Sonnen, where I'm sure he saw probably his biggest payday since he's been with the UFC.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I mean, let's be real here. They're looking for big money fights, and quite frankly, if I'm being honest, the dude has cleaned out the division. I mean, we got some up-and-coming guys, but he has cleaned out the division, and if he wants a big money fight like that, it's going to have to be outside of 185.
A super fight. It's going to have to be a super fight. Yeah. No, I don't think there's any doubt about that. You know, without drawing a crazy parallel between him and Mayweather, I think of guys like that just in terms of guys that are huge pay-per-view draws like that. And I know a lot of guys in the boxing world, they always want the fights with, you know, the Mayweathers, the Pacquiaos out there, just because of the fact that those guys in and up just by themselves are huge draws. I mean, would it be fair to say that anybody fighting Anderson Silva, like a Chris Weidman, for example, maybe another win under his belt, you don't think that'd be a big pay-per-view or draw?
You know, I think it would be, but I mean, if we're trying to compare it to what he just did with Chael Sonnen, absolutely not.
Well, I mean, that was a big-time grudge match. I mean,
yeah, but I think they could put together some super fights that would match those numbers. You know, the first thing, you know, it's funny. 3 years ago, everybody was talking about Anderson Silva GSP.
Right.
GSP's been on the shelf for a little while, and we had the emergence of John Jones. So now everybody wants to talk Anderson Silva, John Jones. I think either one of those fights would be huge pay-per-view buys. You know, I'll probably get hated on by all the Sure Dog badasses, but one thing I used to always think of, you know, and call me crazy, but I always thought Nick Diaz would match up pretty good against Anderson Silva, just style-wise. I would have loved to see that fight.
Yeah, no, I mean, style-wise, let's be honest, I'd like to see Nick Diaz fight anybody. I mean, I'd just like to see that guy come back. I don't think he's retired.
Yeah, you constantly think he's gonna lose, and he goes out there and dominates the guy.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't, you know, in the near future, maybe Chris Weidman gets a couple more wins, one more impressive win, and he's ready for a title. Maybe Hector Lombard goes in there Saturday nights, completely smashes Tim Boach, and then starts talking all kinds of trash about Anderson Silva. And let's be real here, that guy is cocky. Well, so I don't put it past him.
Well, you raise an interesting point. It's going to take a guy that runs that suck a little bit. I mean, honestly, how many tickets do you think Chael Sonnen's mouth actually, you know, how many butts do you think put in seats there and pay-per-view buys that translated into?
Hundreds of thousands.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think part of it's, you know, they got to promote and they got to sell a fight at the end of the day, you know, and part of it's talent. Part of it is just being able to talk and generate interest, whether it's, you know, positive or negative.
No, and part of it was the fact that Chael Sonnen won the first 4.5 rounds. I mean, that was part of the hype and the rematch.
Absolutely.
He dominated 4.5 rounds and lost basically. So. You know, but like I said, with that being said, the 185 division right now, it's ruled by Anderson Silva. It has been for a long time.
10 consecutive title defenses. I mean, that's like it's got to be something. I mean, I don't think anybody's even going to come close to touching that ever.
No, that's unheard of. And I mean, the problem with cleaning out your division is you got to fight what's in front of you. I mean,
absolutely.
the
Next
UFC,
best guy.
yeah, the UFC is going to have to eventually throw the number one contender at him, whether or not the Anderson Silva camp thinks it's going to make money or not.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's under contract. He's supposed to fight whoever they put in front of him. Now,
No doubt.
let me ask you this. Do you think that guys use the term big money when it's a lose-lose situation? And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. When Shogun was approached to fight Glover Teixeira, that's a good example of a lose-lose for a guy, just in that, if he beats a guy that is relatively unheard of, he beat a guy he was supposed to beat. If he loses, oh my God, what happened? I mean, that's a good example of a lose-lose. Do you think that a guy like Chris Weidman potentially being the number one contender, do you think that that's kind of it's not a good fight for Anderson Silva in that it might be looked at as a lose-lose for him?
You know what? Yeah, to the hardcore MMA fans, there's really no. I mean, Chris Weidman's a big deal to hardcore MMA fans. I
Sure.
think your casual fans that never heard his name, he lacks the star power that they're looking for.
Well, he just had his coming out party, so
he did, but he still lacks that star power. I mean, he had his coming out party on an FX card, so
right.
Maybe I still think he needs one more fight. If he dominates his next opponent, albeit Alan Belcher, which they should, I don't know why.
There's another guy.
Why
There's
they haven't
another guy
in that fight, I don't know. But if he dominates his next opponent, then absolutely he should be the number one contender. And the UFC, with all the shows they have out now, all the shows leading up to the pay-per-views, that they'll build up the fight. They always do.
Yeah, they'll dig deep. They'll find somebody, I'm sure. And you know what? If Mike Tyson said it best, the price is right, I'll fight a lion.
Fight a lion, baby. Yeah.
I don't think you could say it better. Luke Rockhold, another guy in 185, Strikeforce champ. He beats Tim Kennedy pretty decisively. I mean, Tim Kennedy, in my opinion, didn't really look great in that fight. I mean, he looked pretty much like a one-trick pony. I mean, I don't think there's any secret to what he was trying to do.
No, he looked like he was fighting a guy that was better than him.
Well, I don't think there's any.
That's what I took from it.
Well, I don't think there's any denying that. But I mean, it really looked all he had to offer in that fight was basically a takedown, maybe a haymaker here or there. It just looked very one-dimensional for a guy that supposedly is the best that division has to offer in Strikeforce. Who should Luke Rockhold fight next? I mean, what does this guy do? From here on out.
Well, I really think it depends on whether or not he goes over to the UFC or stays in Strikeforce. I mean, if he stays in Strikeforce, I think it's pretty clear that Lorenz Larkin is going to be his next opponent. Which brings me to Strikeforce, by the way. I've been down on them for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
From the broadcast team, from just the long layoffs and everything in between. But you got a guy, Lorenz Larkin, first fight at middleweight, looks pretty good against Robbie Lawler. Didn't gas, something like that. I don't think the weight cut was that big of an issue.
No.
But that's the problem we have with Strikeforce. If you have a name, for example, Keith Jardine, or you have one dominating performance, and all of a sudden you're in line for a title shot. That just goes to show you how
no depth. I mean,
how thin that roster is. And Lorenz Larkin, I mean, no question, is probably going to be the next guy fighting for the 185 title. If I was Luke Rockhold, you're 9-0 in Strikeforce, 9-0.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time to move on. If the UFC comes calling, I think he needs to run with it. I
mean, if you were in his shoes, would you drop the strap at Strikeforce for the bigger promotion?
You know what? It's tough for me right now. I almost want to say maybe I do. Maybe I train one more time for Lorenz Larkin and let all those guys like the Belchers and the Stans and Bispings beat each other up. That way the picture is a little clearer when he does go in. Because if he was just to get thrown in there now, in my opinion, I've even heard some people saying that he should go get a shot against Anderson Silva. Are you crazy?
That's insane.
Are you crazy? These people that keep on comparing the Strikeforce champions to the UFC champions got to stop. Gilbert Melendez, Luke Rockhold, phenomenal talents, but are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you'll find more often than not that it's casual mainstream fans that are relatively new. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, there's a definitive difference in skill set. I mean, there's no question, and that actually. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, to answer your question a little clearly, I think it's kind of a win-win situation for Luke Rockhold if he goes either way. But if I was in his shoes, I think maybe I'd defend that belt one more time, beat Lorenz Larkin, and then take my skills over to UFC. But I got a feeling it's not really going to be his choice.
No, it's not going to be his choice. It's going to be it's going to be what puts butts in seats and sells pay-per-views and tickets. I agree with you in that he should fight Lorenz Larkin. That way, at the end of the day, he can definitively say, hey, I cleaned out that division. Strikeforce literally has nothing else to offer me. In my opinion, I mean, if he moves over today into the UFC, I don't think he's even a top 5 185er. I mean, he's not far from it, but he's definitely not a top 5. So
he would just be another guy thrown into the mix. He'd be another guy along with Mark Munoz and all those guys. It's just a stacked division. The problem is you got Anderson Silva and you got 5 guys underneath him right now that just, I mean, they're just all so close bunched up. I mean, you could throw Chael Sonnen into that mix.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Sonnen and Munoz now find themselves in the back of the line. I mean, let that dust settle. There's going to be a couple more guys in the back of the line. There's going to be plenty of great matchups
and
for
I think
Rockhold.
Sonnen and Munoz would both be favored over Luke Rockhold if they were to fight tomorrow.
As well they should.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've fought the top 10 competition for a while now, and they are established.
And again, if you're Strikeforce, I mean, we keep on talking about how there's only a couple stars left, and let's be quite honest, most of their stars are women, so they don't have as of now, they don't have to worry about them going over to the UFC, but all this talk about what few stars they have left coming over to UFC, I mean, what are they going to do as a promotion? I mean, what can they do?
Well, it's an interesting conversation, and actually it kind of reminds me of something we were talking about earlier today, just the fact that Strikeforce is charging what they are for nosebleed seats. I mean, it's insane. I mean, these guys, hate to get off on a tangent, but I mean, these guys are drawing less than 3,000 almost everywhere they go, and it's a major promotion. I mean, they have a lot of production, they have a lot of costs. I mean, they got to be losing money hand over fist. I mean, what do you make of those ticket prices, man? They got to be more flexible.
Yeah, I mean, to clear it up for everybody, it was $60 for a seat absolutely at the furthest away from the cage you could get. I looked before we got to the studio today, and $60 for a main promotion like that isn't that big a deal if it was going to sell out. But it's not even close. There's going to be 2,000 people there.
I'm saying we could literally give away tickets on this show and tell people it doesn't matter if it's the last row. You can move anywhere you want as soon as you get in the building. It doesn't matter.
No, literally. Strikeforce has got so many problems. I think this contract with Showtime,
I think that's going to be a wrap.
I think it's holding them back. I mean, we look on the West Coast, it doesn't even come on until 10.
Yeah, it's tape delay.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to stay off Twitter, you got to stay off Facebook. I mean, stay off the computer in general. I mean, because you're going to get the spoiler.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree with you, man. I want to get your early thoughts on Shane Carwin and Roy Nelson being named the early tough coaches. Dana White kind of had a tight lid on that for a little while, and I got to be honest with you, this totally catches me by surprise. I love it. What do you think?
Just about the show or the fight, both?
The fight. I mean, do you think it'll be good TV? Do you think it's a good main event? I mean, will they have a chance to build this up?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about the show, I think the show is going to be great. I mean, I think the show is going to be phenomenal. They're canning the whole live thing. So even if the show isn't great, they're going to find some production team to make it great.
Yeah.
If you catch my drift. I mean, they're going to twist little angles here or there. They're going to do all that stuff. As far as the fight, I mean, it's basically going to come down to, hit Roy Nelson's chin to Shane Carwin's power, really.
Yeah,
I mean, any other? I give Big Country the edge in just about everything else but striking, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I could say that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really hard. I mean, it's a tough sell. I mean, like I said, my early thoughts are that I love it. I mean, there's a couple questions that need to be answered though. Carwin's back. I mean, that's the X factor. How is that going to hold up? I mean, you look at a fighter like I hate to keep using Tito Ortiz as an example, but I mean that's a guy that's had a lot of back surgeries, and over the years, you just don't see his body reacting the way he used to with back surgeries. It's a very tricky thing in sports, back surgeries. He's a long layoff. I'm a huge believer in ring rust. Although when he fought Junior Dos Santos, he was also coming off a substantial layoff, and he seemed to actually he debunked all the rumors and the questions about him not being able to go around anymore. He went the distance in that fight. He's an example of a guy that kind of showed us something different there. X factor is going to be his back, but again, another question would be Roy Nelson's chin. I don't think there's any argument that he's got the best chin in any division.
Real quick, one thing I liked is Roy Nelson when he was a fighter on The Ultimate Fighter. It was the same season that Kimbo Slice was on there, and Roy Nelson was like, "Oh, I'm the star." He was like making it seem like everyone was here to see him, which nobody was. And then turns out he was right. He went on to win the whole thing. So
absolutely. Well, what we're going to see there, I think we're going to see good TV. Somebody's going to make it good TV on top of that. And really we want to see how many jackhammers can Roy Nelson eat, and for that matter, how many jackhammers from Shane Carwin has anybody been able to eat?
Not many.
I mean, honestly, not very much. When we come back, we want to ask you, will TRT ruin MMA? Did Dayyn Garcia live up to the hype? Let's talk about it. We'll be right back. You're listening to Pound for Pound Radio with Nick and Dayyn, ESPN Radio, 1700. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And we'll see you real soon.
Take care.
And we're out. Good show, guys.
Thanks, Producer Jen. Good job there, little boy.
Thank you, Fat Man. You listen to talk radio in San Diego?
Of course I do. Where do you think I get my knowledge?
You call it knowledge, I call it right-wing propaganda.
What do you do now that there's no Air America, and thank goodness for that?
Well, unfortunately, when Air America went away, I had to find something else, so I started listening to sports talk radio.
And sports talk radio in San Diego is all the same. It's the same old, same old.
You're right. That's about to change.
How?
August 4th, PFP Sports is bringing their show to ESPN Radio AM 1700.
Really? August 4th, is that a Saturday?
Saturday, August 4th, 9 o'clock in the morning. They're going to have their show every Saturday, and we will finally have a show that talks combat sports in San Diego.
Well, that I will definitely not miss.
Yeah, me neither.
Wow, you guys agree on something? It must be good.
So I've been living in Southern California my entire life, and I've been an MMA fan for a very long time. And if it's one thing that I can't stand, it's the lack of coverage for this amazing sport. I mean, really, if you're a fan of this sport, the only place you could find anything whatsoever is on FM. And I'm talking for 5, maybe 10 minutes, and you don't learn anything.
Not only that, it's your biggest stars, too. UFC champions. We hear them locally here on rock stations for 5 minutes. Getting interviewed by rock DJs. So finally we're bringing our show, Pound for Pound Sports, MMA dominant radio show to the air, ESPN Radio 1700. Very excited about the move, starting August 4th, Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 10.
And I can't wait. I mean, what a fantastic opportunity we finally have. We're in on the ground floor of something truly great, and I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity. So make sure you tune in Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10. We got the whole hour, ESPN Radio 1700, San Diego.
August 4th, the takeover.
Welcome back to Pound for Pound Sports. Thank you, Dayyn here, ESPN Radio 1700. The world of MMA rolling strong once again this week. Another acquisition in the MMA's world's biggest promotion, UFC. Dayyn Silva. He signs with them. Top 5 flyweight by just about anybody's account. What I got to know from you, Dayyn, is who should he fight first?
You know, I'm not quite sure. I love the acquisition, by the way. I have him number 4 right now in my rankings. I think that might be a little high. It might be a little high, but 14-1 record, you can't argue with that.
Ambitious. Let's go with ambitious.
Well, he's a top 5 fighter. Everyone's got him top 5.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But with as far as who should he fight first? I mean, you got the flyweight division. It's so new in the UFC. You got your 4, big guns: Ian McCall, Demetrius Johnson, Joseph Benavidez, and I'd even throw John Dodson in the mix. Do we throw him at one of those guys early? I don't think we do.
No.
I think they should. I don't think they.
I would
will,
love to see it, but I don't know, man. I mean, look at. I don't know. I mean, I hate to use Lombard and Bosch as a barometer here, but I mean, Bosch is a guy that's been in the light heavyweight division, and some guys come into the UFC with debuting against some tough competition.
Yeah, but the problem with the flyweight division is they're not stacked.
They're not established
full of names and established talent like the middleweight division is. So I mean, you got those top 4 that I just named, and then it's a pretty dramatic. I don't want to say fall off in talent, but fall off in recognition, maybe.
Yeah, recognition, notoriety.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think maybe they love to fight one of those guys. Ian McCall, I was thinking might be a decent matchup, but they already found him a fight. So
right.
I think they give him one of the guys no one's ever heard of.
I'd actually like
to put it quite frank.
Yeah, no. I could see them doing that, but then if you're going to leave it up to the fans, which nobody ever does, I would like to see John Dodson. I mean, you threw his name in the hat there. I think that'd actually be great. I mean, 2 rising stars in the UFC, 2 great examples of flyweights. I mean, speed, reach, talent. I mean, I couldn't think of a better matchup than Dodson at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something though. I think if those 2 were to fight tomorrow, John Dodson, he would knock him out.
He looks incredible, John Dodson.
He's phenomenal.
He really
phenomenal
does.
Stand-up fighter. From what I've seen of Dayyn Silva, the guy gets you on the ground and you don't get up.
Yeah,
period. But he's definitely got to improve his striking because he's going to get picked apart by some of these better strikers in the flyweight division, especially with the speed some of these guys are dealing with.
And that's why people are tuning in to watch flyweight. Some speed like you've never seen, and they push the pace for all 3 rounds, 5. I mean, if they're fighting for a title, but I mean the point is they have it seems like unlimited gas tanks. Really, you hit the nail right on the head there with Silva. The way I look at him, I think he's almost like a Damian Maia, just a faster, more aggressive version. I mean, he subbed over half of his competition. I mean, but again, he hasn't knocked anybody out, which would indicate he needs to work on those hands a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not even just knocking him out. I mean, Damian Maia has decent enough stand-up to where he could set it up to use his takedowns. Basically, Dayyn Silva, and I'm not making this up.
I'm not making this up.
YouTube his fights. He finally, I was watching a fight the other day with him and Danny Martinez.
I was watching that today, too, actually.
And once he's able to take him down, I mean, Danny Martinez was having a really hard time getting him off, exactly. But it wasn't like, he dropped him with a left, shot him for a takedown. He just happened to catch a takedown with, Danny Martinez being a little too over-aggressive in the one round that I watched. But, great talent nonetheless. The guy's going to do nothing but improve. So
a fantastic opportunity, and that's actually why I drew that parallel between him and Damian Maia. I mean, he's probably a little more aggressive to Silva, but I mean, again, once the guy grabs a hold of you, he takes your back. I mean, it's almost impossible to get him off you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Fantastic talent. I mean, an amazing opportunity for De Silva. I love the flyweight division. I think that makes us 9 divisions now, 9 divisions strong. I mean, that's a lot of titles, a lot of fights, but each division kind of has something different to offer, and I love what the flyweights bring.
And I remember when the UFC made the whole move with the WEC bringing all the lightweight classes over, and I mean, what an exciting addition these weight classes have been.
It really has.
I mean, we got guys like Jose Aldo that would have never been in the UFC.
Never.
Maybe would have if he decided to go up to 155.
That's what I'm saying.
What a great to absorb all those weight classes. What a smart move.
Somebody had their thinking cap on for sure. And it's funny, you watch those guys out there, and I used to think 155 was small until you see these other weight classes, and then you see guys like, I mean, look at Uriah Faber. I mean, he's not even a lightweight, and he looks huge compared to some of these guys. I mean, for the life of me, I don't know how grown men could weigh a $125, but I mean, I love it. Apparently they're out there, and they're fantastic fighters.
No, and you very rarely do you see a boring fight in some of these smaller weight classes. They're just so quick and exciting. And
absolutely.
I love watching them.
Absolutely. That brings us on to the question of the year, really, is TRT an epidemic? I mean, it seems like every time I turn around, everybody's applying for a TRT exemption, or some guy didn't apply, he didn't go the right way, and then he pops the test either day of the fight, day after the fight. I mean, what do we got to do about this? I mean, clearly I don't think anybody can argue the fact that it is an epidemic now, and not just MMA, but combat sports in general. I mean, it seems like people found this loophole, man, and then just everybody and their dog is exploiting this loophole.
Well, and we see this in other sports, and by no means am I a doctor. I don't know the medical. I'm not 100% clear on this whole thing. That's the problem with TRT is it's just so cloudy. Nobody really understands the whole situation. But I mean, professional athletes, with the money that's on the line here, they're always looking to get the upper hand, and I don't blame them.
Sure.
I'm a very novice guy that likes to work out at the gym, but I don't even like when the dude next to me at the gym is showing me up. So I get it. I get it when they're on such a big level, but at the same time, TRT, testosterone replacement, I mean, we're talking about the world's greatest athletes. Most of them in their 30s. Most of them in their 30s, are they really having problems already with their testosterone?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like that. I mean, imagine the luck on that. I mean, have you ever seen a bigger collection of top-tier Olympic caliber athletes who are all deficient at the same time? I mean, what are the odds of that happening? I mean, honestly, I've never seen a bigger group of guys, and it's supposed to be for guys who are in their late 30s. They don't produce as much, and it's supposed to keep them consistent with the levels of everybody else.
I mean, we're talking about
mid to late 30s.
We're talking about guys in their 50s and 60s, not late 30s.
Well, that's where it's become acceptable. That's who it should be for. Guys like Dan Henderson, guys that are in their 40s. Stop
it. No. It shouldn't be for anybody contracted in the UFC. Dan Henderson.
I disagree.
Dan Henderson's in better shape than 95% of 25-year-olds out there.
Yeah,
you telling me he has a testosterone deficiency?
Yeah, but 95% of 25-year-olds aren't fighting in the UFC.
It doesn't matter. So since he's an Olympic caliber athlete fighting in the UFC, he should be allowed to cheat?
No, I don't think that's cheating. If it's that's the problem. Everybody can go find a doctor who's going to play ball. We just don't know.
That's the problem. That's exactly the problem. You know what? So you know what I compare that to? We do this show in San Diego, and here in California we have medical marijuana. You know what it takes to get a medical marijuana card? You go in there with a C note and a stub toe.
Yeah.
And you'll get clear. Boom. Here's your medical marijuana
card. Broke my nail. Can I get me up with the card, please?
Yeah. I picked my nose a little too hard.
Can't
it
sleep.
doesn't even matter. There's endless reasons why you can get
right.
those. And to me, this just reeks of that same thing.
It does.
Dan Henderson shouldn't get exempted. Chael Sonnen, I heard him in an interview. If I don't take my medicine, I'll die.
Come on, that's crazy. You look at a guy like Randy Couture who never took anything all the way through the age of 48. I mean, that's kind of,
that we know.
That kind of, well, maybe not that we know. I mean, nobody ever found out. I mean, he had more title fights or as many, I should say, as anybody out there. So I mean, he was under the watchful eye of every commission out there. I don't know, man. It really is an epidemic because the more people that get away with it, or the more people that can somehow find an exemption for this. I mean, it's just it's opening the gate for everybody and their dog to go apply for one.
I'm trying not to beat a dead horse here, but explain to me why you think a guy who's an Olympic caliber athlete should be exempt from TRT. I mean, why?
No, I don't think that. I don't think you should. Are you saying a guy that's
like Dan Henderson? You said you think he should be exempt because he's in his late 30s.
No, I don't think. I digress. I shouldn't say he should be exempt. I haven't seen Dan Henderson's medical record, so I can't tell you for sure. But I'm saying if there was a candidate for some kind of exemption, it would be a guy who's 41 as opposed to in his late 20s, early 30s. That's all I'm saying. I don't know Dan Henderson personally. I don't know what his, but I'm just saying it. He it should be somewhere in that age group. It shouldn't be a huge collection of guys in their early 30s who are in the best shape of their life. That's crazy.
I agree. You know what? Look, the newest one, a fighter that I absolutely love is Frank Mir. He's the newest one to come out and get a doctor exemption. And we look at Frank Mir.
Everybody can get an exemption. Everybody.
I mean, look what he's done over the last 3 years. You remember the first time he fought Brock Lesnar? I think he was weighing in his 230s.
Right.
He put on 40 pounds of absolute muscle. I mean, solid muscle.
Yeah.
And you trying to tell me that TRT or whatever? I mean,
it had to have something to do with it.
I have a hard time thinking anybody works out that hard to where they could add 40 pounds of muscles in a couple.
I would.
Years.
You know what I want to see with what's the common denominator here? Is it guys that you mentioned Frank Mir. I mean, if it's been one knock on him his entire career, it would be his gas tank. I mean, do you think that there's a parallel here where it's mainly guys who are wrestlers that tend to go into the championship rounds or the later rounds? I mean, you don't see knockout artists or guys with insane jiu-jitsu skills applying for TRT. It's mainly guys who are wrestlers or tend to have a lot of decisions.
No, if I'm being just perfectly honest right now, I think it's just guys trying to get the upper hand. Period. I mean. For a long time, you look at other sports, and I'm sure it's going on in MMA.
In every sport, there's something different.
You got all these illegal steroids that people are taking. Oh, well, those could get tested in your blood. Well, check out what I got. The next best thing, human growth hormone. This isn't in my blood test. You know what I'm saying? So they're always trying to find loopholes. They're always trying to find the back way in.
Right.
And always trying to get the upper hand, which I to be quite honest with you, I can't argue with you. I can't sit here and tell you from this stool that I want to do the exact same thing if I was in their situation.
Well, you're in the fight here.
I take some pretty shady stuff as it is now, okay, and I have a normal 9 to 5, and I do this show. I mean, and I'm already taking some stuff just to kind of give me an edge of the gym. I couldn't imagine what these guys are going through. At the same time, it's not okay.
No, it doesn't make it okay. And you know what? I think I part of me wonders, do some of these guys kind of feel the pressure? Because, I mean, let's face it, the average life of a fighter isn't that long. No. I mean, you literally, at any given moment, I don't care what division you're in, you're 2, maybe 3 if you're Dana's buddy. You're 3 losses away from finding yourself in a lesser promotion, substantially less money. I mean, it's dollars and cents here.
Another guy that supposedly just came off at TRT and looked phenomenal is Nate Marquardt. And that's another thing.
Did he really need it? I mean,
from what I've been hearing is once you're on TRT, it's a medical issue. You need TRT to perform your
to survive. Yeah.
So then all of a sudden now, he could just stop it and then go out there and smash a dude. I mean,
and he looked as fantastic as I've ever seen him in his career. Last Saturday night.
Yeah, that is probably one of the best fights I've.
Incredible.
Yeah, he did. He looked great.
And that's we were making our predictions last week for that fight, and I in my opinion, I sat here just last week and I thought he had too many hurdles to overcome. That being one of them, and I mean he literally put all those to bed. I mean there's no question anymore, and I think Nate Marquardt is probably a great example.
Well, what's the difference between a guy like Nate Marquardt who did not get medically exempted? He tested dirty, and a guy like Alistair Overeem. I mean, should we be holding standards to what these guys are taking? It doesn't matter what they're taking, in my opinion. The fact that they're taking something they shouldn't be. I mean, just the fact that Alistair Overeem was taking something illegal and this guy was just doing TRT. It's like, oh, he's just doing TRT. That's okay.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what I want to see is the best guy win. I don't want to see the guy who put together the best science experiment and got the right doctors and played the game right. I want to see the best fighter win that night. That's what I want to see, and I think everybody else does too.
Yeah.
That takes us to speaking of a great fight, boxing's kind of. I don't think there's any denying the fact that boxing's I mean, how many black eyes can you possibly have? I mean, it's amazing. You look at the Pacquiao fight. Anybody that wants to fight Mayweather is obviously looking for a payday, and why shouldn't they? I mean, these gravy trains. I mean, there's not too many of them around anymore. But you look at a great fight, Amir Kahn versus Dayyn Garcia, and this kind of goes back to everything we've been saying for weeks. Really, is that some of the best fights of the entire year are the free ones that they're giving out. They're not even the pay-per-view fights. I don't think this was any exception. I mean, what did you think of that fight? I mean, was it everything that you thought it would be?
You know what? I'm slowly starting to get back into boxing, mostly because 100% because of you. But I've been off of boxing for a long time, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched every fight for the last 10 years. But more recently, that was a phenomenal fight. If the only problem is if we could only have fights like that every month, and
I know.
And we don't.
I know. And you know what, boxing, you mentioned everybody who's an MMA fan and hates boxing, and there's plenty of those guys in boxing who feel that way about MMA. But the one knock that a lot of people have on boxing is the fact, they have pillows, they're 10, 12-ounce gloves, this and that. When you watch how hard Amir Kahn was throwing that leather, I mean, my God, he was throwing every combination with bad intentions. He was fast. He was. he did. In my opinion, he did everything right. If I'm Amir Khan's camp, I don't do anything different.
Okay, but to take that, if those were 4-ounce gloves, Dayyn Garcia
much
would
different
trust me.
Yeah, much different story.
Yeah.
That's a totally different sport. I don't think anybody's denying that. But I don't think anybody can deny that. I think this was an incredible fight. It was exactly what boxing needs. Two guys throwing down in a phone booth. Somebody's got to fall.
It was a great
Bottom
fight.
line.
You know, and props to Dayyn Garcia, who's getting schooled early. His speed was a factor early. He was able to land that big left. And
stayed consistent.
We're running out of time, but another problem with they basically let that guy just get beat on for 4 minutes while he was out on his feet. So it's another problem I have with boxing. But tremendous fight, and I look forward to more of those.
And what do you think of Garcia's daddy, man? What a dirtbag that guy is,
dude.
huh?
Yeah.
You see the guy in the pre and the post fight.
After watching Chisora and Hay earlier in the day, which was just a joke, and we get into that another day. It was just nice to see this fight.
It was.
Good fight.
What a fantastic fight. Honestly, I can't wait to see what Freddie Roach and them put together. I mean, fantastic gym over there. I don't think Amir Kahn losing takes anything away whatsoever from Wildcard Gym. But with that, we're going to come back. Faber plus 165. Can this dog grab you some cash? We'll preview everything for UFC 149 and then some. And my favorite segment, take it to the book. ESPN Radio 1700.
Pound for Pound Sports with Nick and Dayyn.
We'll be right back.
And we'll see you real soon.
Take care.
And we're out. Good show, guys.
Thanks, Producer Jen. Good job there, little boy.
Thank you, Fat Man. You listen to talk radio in San Diego?
Of course I do. Where do you think I get my knowledge?
You call it knowledge, I call it right-wing propaganda.
What do you do now that there's no Air America, and thank goodness for that?
Well, unfortunately, when Air America went away, I had to find something else, so I started listening to sports talk radio.
Sports talk radio in San Diego is all the same. It's the same old, same old.
You're right. That's about to change.
How?
August 4th, PFP Sports is bringing their show to ESPN Radio AM 1700.
Really? August 4th. Is that Saturday?
Saturday, August 4th, 9 o'clock in the morning. They're going to have their show every Saturday, and we will finally have a show that talks combat sports in San Diego.
Well, that I will definitely not miss.
Yeah, me neither.
Wow, you guys agree on something? It must be good.
So I've been living in Southern California my entire life, and I've been an MMA fan for a very long time. And if it's one thing that I can't stand, it's the lack of coverage for this amazing sport. I mean, really, if you're a fan of this sport, the only place you could find anything whatsoever is on FM. And I'm talking for 5, maybe 10 minutes, and you don't learn anything.
Not only that, it's your biggest stars, too. UFC champions. We hear them locally here on rock stations for 5 minutes. Getting interviewed by rock DJs. So finally, we're bringing our show, Pound for Pound Sports, MMA dominant radio show to the air. ESPN Radio 1700. Very excited about the move, starting August 4th, Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 10.
And I can't wait. I mean, what a fantastic opportunity we finally have. We're in on the ground floor of something truly great, and I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity. So make sure you tune in Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10. We got the whole hour, ESPN Radio 1700, San Diego.
August 4th, the takeover. Hey, welcome back to Pound for Pound with Nick and Dayyn. This is our final segment. We're going to preview UFC 149, do a little take to the book, and if we have some time, we're going to get to some of your phone calls. Real quick, leading off the card, UFC 149, we got Chris Clements versus Matt Riddle. How do you have it?
You know what? I think this is another great example of Joe Silva matchmaking. This fight's actually been changed a few times. Clements was supposed to face Sierra Baja Derzada, who then stepped up to fill in for the injured Thiago Alves. Intriguing matchup. I mean, Matt Riddle, he former New York State wrestling champ in high school. He's 1-0 as an amateur. The crazy thing that I notice about his record is the fact that every single professional fight's taken place in the UFC. I think that's kind of crazy. I don't know anybody else who could say that.
He
really.
went into the Ultimate Fighter House with a 0-0 record.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that happened, but he seems to be faring pretty well. Last-minute replacements really has just been the story of his career. I mean, he's had mixed success. Right now he's trying to put it all together and look for finishes. You look at a guy like Clements. I'm a big fan of Sean Tompkins in his camp. I mean, and you look at a guy like Clements, 10 of 11 wins by knockout. I mean, that's pretty indicative of the camp there. No surprises. His last fight was a split decision win debut versus Keith Wisniewski. And then the fight before that, he TKO'd Rich Clemente in a smaller promotion. I think it was Score in December. He loves to throw 3-4 punch combinations to set up that overhand right. And I was watching a lot of film on this guy. He looks fantastic. I love Sean Tompkins' camp. And because of that, I got to go with Chris Clements in this one.
You know, you brought up that fight with Rich Clemente, and I got to tell you folks out there, YouTube that video because that is a straight-up backyard beating that he put on Rich Clemente, a UFC vet.
A veteran.
I mean, a guy that's got wins.
A lot of professional wins.
We're talking about a guy that beat Melvin Gillard. We were there. We saw that. And so Chris Clemente absolutely throws bombs. I think this is just a bad matchup for Matt Riddle. I think Matt Riddle is improving. I think he's looked better. But I think Chris Clement, I actually like him. Did I call him Clemente?
Chris Clements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He knocked out Rich Clemente. Yeah.
I mean Chris.
Very similar.
But anywho, yeah, I think he's going to win. I think he's just going to land some bombs, and it's going to be 99 for Matt Riddle.
I tend to agree with you, man. Brian Ebersol, 50-14. He got number 50 about a month ago. He fights James Head, 10-2. A really good up-and-comer. I actually met Brian Ebersol at the UFC Expo, man. What an amazing guy that guy is. I actually asked him about the pace of the TJ Wahlberger fight, and he said that those are his favorite kinds. He loves wars like that. He loves being tested, and I mean, this guy's a great example. He's coming off 10 straight wins. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He's a former Division I wrestler, and I actually think that's kind of relevant because a lot of wrestlers, actually, according to Brian Ebersol, he said he's not. It's not uncommon for a guy to compete 40 to 50 times in the span of about 3 months. So you're talking about a guy who's used to doing that. He doesn't mind. He wants to stack up fights on that resume, and we love to see it. I mean, the guy's very unorthodox. He's extremely hard to submit, and I love those capoeira kicks that he throws out of nowhere. I mean, fantastic guy. James Head, he has some really good Muay Thai and boxing. He's a Rafael Lovato purple belt. That's legit. He won silver in Worlds as a blue belt. The guy's got hands. He's really tricky if he takes your back. I think Ebersol's got too much experience, so I think that's really going to be the story of this fight. If TJ Wahlberger couldn't put him away with that pace, I don't think a guy that's up-and-coming like James Head is going to do the same thing. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what, We talk about this a little bit earlier in the show, is about these no-win situations, and to be quite honest with you, I think this is one for Brian Ebersol. Although he's not the biggest name we have, I mean, he's definitely a name. And when I first saw this fight, I'm like, why is he fighting him? I mean, other than the paycheck, of course, which is why they're all in there. I think it's really a no-win situation. James Head, his takedown defense, not the best. So I see Ebersol getting this fight.
He's not going to put away Brian Ebersol. I mean, I just don't think if a guy like Wahlberger with that pace, it's just like you watch a guy like you watch a guy like Ebersol, and it's so hard to put the guy away. Every time you think he's in trouble, he scrambles. He's got an escape. Just a fantastic fighter, man.
I see Ebersol just getting, I don't want to say takedowns of blue, but I see him getting several takedowns and being able to ground and pound his way to a decision here.
Get creative.
But to be all honest with you, to our betting fans out there, we'll get to take it to the book in a minute, but stay away from these odds. These odds are too lopsided in both directions to put any money on it.
Yeah, they're horrendous, but you know what? I'll talk about that. Take it to the book. Czech Congo, 17-7. Sean Jordan, 13-3. I mean, you talk about an example of a lose-lose. This would be one. Czech Congo, he's been around for a long time, but I don't think there's any denying the fact that he is officially a UFC gatekeeper. In a lesser promotion, I would take offense to that, but it happens to be the best promotion in the world, so, I mean, could you really be offended?
No.
Honestly?
No. I mean, that's what he is.
He is. That's fair to say.
Right? I think it's fair. I think it's, yeah.
I mean, he's a gatekeeper for sure. Great kickboxer, big power. His chin's been tested in his last 3 fights. I think his last fight he was TKO'd by Mark Hunt. He was supposed to fight Nogueira. I guess Nogueira's injury isn't quite healed enough for him to be training yet. So it's a tough test. Great example of a lose-lose for him. Sean Jordan, Jackson's MMA, happens to be one of my favorite camps, always has been. The guy was a former fullback at Louisiana State. TKO win in the UFC versus Ollie Thompson on the undercard. He has a submission win against LeVar Johnson. That's not really all that impressive. Who hasn't submitted LeVar Johnson? I mean, that guy they brought him in for his hands. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think there's any denying that. Sean Jordan, a southpaw, very solid base, heavy hands. When I watch this guy's fights, though, I can't help but to think this guy should be fighting at 205. I mean, if you guys look at a picture out there, Google images, anything, I mean, I don't think there's any denying this guy can make 205 and probably should be there. I mean,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right, but he's athletic enough to hang with the heavyweights. The thing that's intriguing to me about this fight is Czech Congo needs to keep this fight. He needs to keep Sean Jordan on the outside because the Sean Jordan fights that I've seen, he likes to get right up in your grill, dirty box, clinch work,
big lefts,
uppercuts.
Absolutely.
I don't want to say he's got a brawling style, but I mean he's got a brawling style, really. I mean,
he's really good at dictating the pace of the fight too. He's a guy like Joey Beltran who just kind of drags you in the mud and makes you fight his fight. And I just don't. I mean that's trouble for Czech Congo.
With that being said, I love that phrase.
With that being said,
I think Czech Congo is going to keep him on the outside, and I think his striking is just going to be too technical, too crisp, and he's going to land one on the button.
That's an interesting prediction. I'm going to go the exact opposite. I think that Sean Jordan is going to close in that distance. I think he's going to force his will, and I think I'm going to go with Jordan in this fight somewhere in the second round. I don't think it's going to go the distance. I really don't.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. One thing that people are talking about. I was watching some of the pre-fight shows on Fuel, and they talk about how good Cheick Kongo is on the ground. Let's not confuse him with a great jiu-jitsu guy on the ground. He's good when he's in a dominating position on the ground.
He's competent.
Yeah,
he's competent on the ground.
When he's in a dominant position. When he's on top of you throwing bombs, he's good. But when he's on his back, fending off submission after submission,
it's like fish out of water.
Yeah, he's not good. So let's clarify that a little bit. This fight goes to the ground. Sean Jordan, absolute advantage. But on the feet, I give Cheick Kongo an advantage, and I think Sean Jordan's going to think he's confident enough to strike with Cheick Kongo. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a bad move.
Southpaw, it's real tough to fight those southpaws, man. That's a question for me. And man, really the question of the night is can Sean Jordan can he close that distance? We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Hector Lombard, co-main event. Tim Boesch. Don't think you've ever found a guy coming in with more steam, more hype, more everything than Hector Lombard. I mean, like I said, we began the show and people are talking his name in the same sentence with Anderson Silva without even having a UFC win. I think it's a bit premature. Hector Lombard, big middleweight. He's making his debut, like we said. He's a southpaw at American Top Team, a fantastic camp. This guy's set promotions in set records in almost every promotion that he's fought in. He's got 19 consecutive wins. He's a fourth dan black belt in judo, black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like I said, huge hype, big opportunity. Tim Boesch, he was a light heavyweight. He drops down to middleweight after a loss versus Phil Davis. Phil Davis, it was just his time. I think that was a pretty good indicator. Again, like a guy that's carrying around a little too much size for Boesch that he probably should drop down. He's done that. He looked great against Kendall Grove, Nick Ring. He was getting owned by Yushin Okami until that third round. He did everything that every fighter should do, and that's go for broke in the third round when you're behind, and it just happened to work out for him. There's a lot of questions in this fight for me, though. Is Hector Lombard, is he going to have jitters? Will he get through that, or will Boesch just get outclassed? I mean, I'm going with Boesch getting outclassed. I think Hector Lombard, I think he wins this fight big. I think it's a great opportunity and a great matchup for him. Do you see it any different?
I don't. You know what? And Hector Lombard, he's 31-2, and I've been a little critical of his resume, but nonetheless, 31-2 is impressive. No matter where you're fighting. I already heard talks today about Hector Lombard started talking about his next opponent, talking about how he wanted to fight Mark Munoz. I'm like, how about you get your head in the game? And one thing I never hear brought up, is how big of a step up in competition this is for Hector Lombard.
Absolutely.
You never hear anyone say that. I mean, this isn't Bellator. It's time for you to put your big boy jacket on. I mean, we're in the UFC now.
That's true.
So, I mean, nobody wants to talk about how big of a step up in competition this is for Lombard. But I think he's going to be able to do what Okami couldn't, and I think he's going to be able to put Tim Boesch away. But again, Hector Lombard, he's kind of a great unknown to a lot of the mainstream fans. I mean, he was fought over in Bellator. He's had some fights in Pride back in the day. But making his UFC debut, and let's not forget, 6 years ago, there's a guy not too many people heard of, Anderson Silva, making his UFC debut, and we both
know how that turned out.
So who knows? Maybe he's this great hype that a lot of the underground guys are saying. I've heard a lot of people saying that he'd smash Anderson Silva. So maybe he will be.
He's a big middleweight, huge middleweight for Lombard. I mean, this guy. I actually wonder how he makes middleweight look. I mean, if you look at his body type, I mean, the guy's carrying around so much mass. I mean, it's amazing.
I wonder if the overconfidence isn't a little too much. I mean, you're a fighter. These guys are the best in the world. They got to be confident, but that's not what I'm trying to say. But, I hope he's not looking past Boesch, which he's making every indication that he is, because Tim Boesch could finish you. I mean, let's be real here. Tim Boesch can land a punch and knock you out.
He absolutely can.
With that being said, I think Hector Lombard wins this fight.
I'm going Lombard, too. I don't think there's any question that's the chalk in this fight. That takes us right into our main event. Uriah Faber, 26-5, versus Renan Barão, 28-1. I look at Faber's resume just today. It's his fourth title shot. I mean, I don't know how many more title shots you can give the guy. I've said for a long time, I think, whatever promotion he's been in, whether it's UFC or WEC, they've tried to make this guy the face of the promotion everywhere. I mean, I'm not saying that they've handed him title shots.
He's a likable guy.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Uriah Faber, but I think a lot of it kind of stems from the fact that he had 7 title defenses in his span with King of the Cage and then WEC. So part of me wonders, does some of that have anything to do with the amount of title shots they give this guy? Is there any merit to that?
No, I mean, I think he's just been a solid, staple in the lighter weight classes, and, he was definitely the face of the WEC. There's no denying that.
No.
And he's a fan favorite.
No, he's definitely a fan favorite. One thing that I noticed, just looking around, is the fact that to me, he looks a little bigger. It looks like he put on a little bit of size for this fight. He was already coming into this fight being the bigger fighter, so, part of me wonders how much of a factor that's going to be. Uriah Faber, extremely well-rounded, a lot of heart. He loves those chokes, guillotine, rear naked. And one thing you can't take away from Uriah Faber is that he sets a really high pace. Again, he's got a lot of heart, high pace. That said, Renan Barão is an absolute monster. The guy's got a 28 fight winning streak. That might even be the most impressive streak ever. I don't know that anybody's ever going to touch that, especially in the UFC. He's a teammate and training partner of Jose Aldo. He's very fast. He's always looking for the finish. I mean, the guy can finish you anywhere, really. I mean, he's in my opinion, he's far more dangerous than Dominic Cruz was in this fight. He's dominated every promotion he's fought in Brazil, and he most recently outclassed a very game Scott Jorgensen just to get this title fight. So with that, gun to my head, I got to pick somebody. I am going with the chalk in this one. I think Uriah Faber is a slight underdog. I actually think the sportsbook they got this right. I mean, it shouldn't be too lopsided, but I do agree with Faber being a slight underdog.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Dominic Cruz. When he went out with the injury, we talked about that on our show that week, and we were basically naming the next opponent before it got announced. I don't think there was any secret that everybody thought it was going to be Renan Barão. And we called that.
It should have been.
They announced that the next week. And that day when it happened, I was like, man, Renan Barão is going to walk away with this thing easy. And the more and more that I've been looking at it, the more and more I've been studying this fight, I don't think it's going to be that easy.
I don't think it's going to be easy at all.
I don't think it's going to be that easy. You look at a lot of Uriah Faber's losses and their decision losses, and I don't think Uriah Faber's going to lose a decision to Renan Barão. If this fight goes a distance, I think it's going to be Uriah Faber that's going to win a decision. I mean, the guy's gas tank is crazy.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the best in the sport. And how I see this fight going down, Renan Barão, he's going to catch him with something crazy early.
Yeah.
And he's going to capitalize on it, and it's going to be TKO. But I think if this goes into rounds 4 and 5, that it's going to start tilting towards Uriah Faber, and I give him the edge if it goes into later rounds. But with that being said, I've been on the Renan Barão train since day one. I mean, I've already got him ranked number 1 in my rankings.
Absolutely.
So I think he wins this fight. Round 2 TKO.
Thank God it's a 5-round fight, man. That's all I
Absolutely.
can say. Real quick, we're going to go with Take It to the Book. My favorite segment, Degenerate Gambler here. Guilty as charged. I'm going with Hector Lombard, -400. Brian Ebersol, -400. And just throw a little wrinkle in the plans. Renan Barão, he's a slight favorite at 190. So, I mean, your payout is, just over even money. $100 to pay out 138. I know it's stingy, but hey, take it up with a book. Who do you got?
You know what? And I advise every single one of you guys to stay away from that bet. But with that being said, that's just too much risk. Too much risk. You're risking your $100 for what? Nothing much, really. So what I got is a couple underdogs for you. A little 3-legger. I got Chris Clements at a +115. Like I said, I think he's going to smash Matt Riddle. Czech Congo +115. And I got Renan Barão -190. And I have no idea what that'll pay out. But it'll be more than what this guy's paid out.
We'll find out. PFPsports.com is your website. At Nick, PFP Sports.
And I'm at Darren, PFP Sports. Don't forget to like our Facebook, facebook.com/pound-for-pound sports.
Praise be of the Most High. That ain't no lie. See you next time.
Cheers.
Peace.
August 4th, the takeover.